The first time I noticed her, it wasn't anything cinematic. She was wiping down a table at the back of Harrow's Cafe, a small place near the bus station where I stopped after class. Mid-morning sun pooled across the floor, and the hum of the espresso machine filled in the silences. I'd been living in the upstairs flat for 3 weeks, still figuring out the city, still answering my mother's texts with all good and nothing else. She looked up only briefly when I came in. Dark hair pinned up, faint creases under her eyes, the kind that makes someone look perpetually thoughtful. I ordered the same thing I always did, black coffee, buttered toast, and she gave a small nod like she already knew. It felt too intimate for a nod. While I waited, I scrolled through my phone but didn't really read anything. A half-typed message to a friend blinked on the screen. "You'd like it here, it's quiet." I didn't send it. Instead, I watched her fold a cloth into a small square, precise movements, fingers brushing crumbs into her palm. There was a ring on her hand, thin and gold, but no one sitting with her on breaks. "Toast's a bit late," she said when she brought my plate. "Sorry, new girl burned the first round." I smiled. "No problem. Gives me time to drink this before it cools." She didn't smile back exactly, more a quick exhale through her nose. Then she moved to the counter, but not before adjusting the edge of my napkin so it lined up with the plate. It was such a small thing that I almost laughed. I kept coming back. Sometimes she asked if I wanted the usual. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. It wasn't flirting, not really, but I started to notice her shoes, flat, worn at the edges, her habit of checking the clock near the kitchen, the way she rubbed her thumb over her phone before putting it face down. One rainy afternoon, she slid into the seat across from me while I was wiping condensation off my cup. "You live upstairs from me, don't you?" she asked. "Yeah. Room 2A. Thought so. You've got the leaky window." I laughed quietly. "Still does." I put a towel under it. She gave a faint smile and tapped her fingers on the table. "I'll get it fixed this week." Then she stood before I could answer. That night I sat at my desk under the leaky window, reading notes I didn't absorb. The towel was damp, and the streetlight threw a thin bar of orange across the floor. My phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number. "I'm locking up late. Can you leave the hall light on?" No name, but I knew who it was. I stared at the text longer than necessary, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. All I wrote back was sure. The light above the stairwell clicked on with a dull hum. From my window, I saw her crossing the street toward the cafe, coat pulled tight, hair loose now. She didn't look up, and I didn't wave. I sat back, phone still in my hand, wondering why her late returns had started to matter to me at all, and what she might ask next. The next evening, the stairwell smelled faintly of rain and coffee grounds. I'd left the hall light on again, though she hadn't asked. When her key scraped the lock downstairs, I was sitting on the top step, pretending to read an article on my phone. She looked up at me, surprised, then set a paper bag on the banister. "Bread," she said, a little breathless. "From the bakery. They gave me too much." I hesitated, then stood and took the bag. "Thanks." My voice came out quieter than I meant. She brushed a damp strand of hair from her face, glancing toward my door like she wasn't sure if she should follow. Inside my flat, the windows still leaked. I spread the towel while she waited in the doorway, arms crossed. "I can call the repair guy tomorrow," she said. "But they're slow. You might want a bucket tonight." I nodded, placing a chipped mug under the drip. She stepped in, toes of her flats just over the threshold. "You're studying late again." "Trying to," I said, half-smile. "Not getting far." Something loosened in her posture. She came closer, set her bag on the table. "Tea?" she asked. "I've got some loose leaves in my kitchen." "Sure," I said, before I could think about why. A few minutes later, we were in her downstairs kitchen. It was warmer there, full of soft clutter, ceramic mugs, a radio tuned low, a photograph of a teenage girl taped to the fridge. She moved easily in the space, spooning tea leaves into a small pot. I kept my hands folded on the counter, trying not to stare at the photo. "My daughter," she said without turning. "She's at university in Lahore. First year." "Oh," I said. "She looks like you." She gave a tiny shrug, poured hot water over the leaves. "She doesn't think so." There was a pause, just the kettle ticking as it cooled. I felt like I should say something, but everything sounded like a line. Finally, I asked, "Do you miss her?" Her hand stilled on the pot's lid. "Every day," she said. "But that's how it's supposed to be, isn't it? They go." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. I divorced her father when she was 10. Traffic was my excuse back then, working late, staying out. But mostly it was just not wanting to come home. She hadn't looked at me yet. I stared at the steam rising from the pot, felt my throat tighten. I wasn't sure why she was telling me this, and I didn't know what to offer back. "I'm sorry," I said finally. She set 2 mugs on the counter. "Nothing to be sorry for. You're just drinking tea." I took the mug she offered. "Still, it sounds hard." She met my eyes for a second. "It was. It isn't now? But some nights," she trailed off, pressing her palm against the counter as if anchoring herself. I thought about my own half-life in the flat upstairs. No friends here yet. Texts unsent. The damp towel under the window. "I know the feeling," I said softly. "Not wanting to go back to a place even when it's supposed to be yours." She tilted her head, studying me. "You're too young to sound like that." "I'm not that young," I said, then winced at how defensive it sounded. She laughed once, quick and dry. 20-something. 24. "Still young," she murmured, but she said it kindly. We drank in silence. The radio murmured a weather report. She tapped her finger against her mug, a small, restless rhythm. I watched her hands, the way the veins rose when she curled them around the ceramic. Without thinking, I mirrored the gesture with my own mug. When the tea was nearly gone, she pushed a plate of bread toward me. "Take this upstairs. You'll need breakfast." I reached for the plate at the same time she adjusted it, and our fingers brushed. Nothing dramatic, just skin against skin for a heartbeat. She didn't pull back immediately. Her thumb grazed the edge of my hand, then she let go. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I would think later, lying awake under the dripping window. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. She walked me to the stairwell, switched off the hall light, and said, almost casually, "Good night." But her gaze lingered half a second longer than it needed to. As if she was waiting for an answer I didn't yet know how to give. The kettle hissed upstairs. I was standing too close to her again, helping her lift a heavy box of winter clothes from the hallway. She'd asked casually, "Could you?" And I'd said yes before my brain caught up. Now we were shoulder to shoulder in the narrow stairwell, her hair brushing my sleeve each time she shifted her grip. "Careful," she murmured. "The bottom's torn." I nodded, throat dry. We set the box down inside her flat. She straightened, brushing lint from her palms, but didn't step back right away. The air smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and rain on concrete. "I'll fix the window tomorrow," she said, eye somewhere near my collar. "Got a handyman finally." "Good," I said. "I was starting to think you forgot." My smile felt off. She looked at me then, quick, searching, and turned toward the kitchen. "Tea." I followed, but something had shifted. Her movements were clipped, her voice lighter than usual, like she was holding a door closed inside herself. On the counter, 2 mugs, a half loaf of bread, a knife. She poured water without asking, but didn't glance at me again. I could hear the radio upstairs through my floorboards when it was quiet. Now it was her silence I heard. "I can make it," I said. "No, it's fine." She set the kettle down harder than needed. "You should be studying." "I'm here anyway." She gave a small, almost laugh, then shook her head. "That's not the point." I wanted to ask what the point was, but footsteps thudded on the porch outside and a voice called through the door. Her coworker from the cafe, the younger one. "You left your phone on the counter." She went still. Then she opened the door a crack, took the phone, said thanks. Her coworker gave me a glance over her shoulder, quick, curious, before retreating down the steps. When the door closed again, the room felt smaller. "She's new," she said softly. "Doesn't know the neighborhood yet." "Right," I said. She set the phone face down, fingers lingering on it. I watched her thumb tap once against the table before she tucked her hand into her pocket. "I should go," I murmured. "Stay," she said quickly, then blinked as if surprised at herself. "I mean, just until the tea's ready." We sat opposite each other. The kettle clicked off. Neither of us moved. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. My hand rested near hers on the table, almost touching. A pause. The radio crackled. She drew in a breath like she might speak, but the sound died in her throat. I leaned forward a fraction. She didn't lean back. Our hands shifted closer, a breath of warmth between our fingers. For a second it felt inevitable. Then she stood abruptly, chair scraping. "I forgot the sugar," she said, though it was already on the table. I exhaled, looked down at my empty hands. "Right." From the kitchen doorway, she watched me, lips parted as if to explain. No words came. Only the kettle's fading hiss and the soft thud of rain against the window. It was a Sunday evening, damp but bright, when we ended up walking together. She had closed the cafe early for inventory. I'd been heading to the small grocery on the corner. We met at the bus stop without planning to. She had a paper bag of bruised peaches under one arm, hair pulled back, but strands falling loose. "Going that way?" she asked, pointing toward the park. "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't. We walked under the plane trees, their leaves just starting to yellow. She shifted the bag from one arm to the other. I kept my hands in my jacket pockets, feeling the phone buzz once. An unread message from someone I no longer felt like answering. She noticed. "You're popular tonight," she said lightly. "Not really." I looked at her, then away. "Just my friend asking why I never go out." She gave a soft sound, half laugh, half sigh. "Maybe you should." "I don't want to," I said before thinking. We stopped near a bench. She set the peaches down and rubbed her palms on her jeans. "You're too young to be this lonely." "You keep saying that," I said quietly. She sat, eyes on the path where a dog trotted past. "Because I mean it." Then, after a pause, "I was like that once. Stayed in. Waited for something to happen. It didn't." I sat beside her. The wood was cold. "What changed?" She shrugged. "I got older. Married. Thought that was the change. It wasn't." She stared at the trees, fingers knotting together. "I left. That was the real change." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I wanted to reach over, still them. Instead I asked, "Do you regret it?" Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost pain. "Depends on the night." We sat in silence. The park smelled of wet grass. She tilted her head back, eyes closed. A strand of hair caught on her lip. She didn't brush it away. "Sometimes," she said finally, "I think I stay late at work just to avoid walking into an empty house." The words hung there, heavier than the bag of peaches. I swallowed. "I wait for you," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes opened. She turned toward me slowly. "Why?" I couldn't answer. My hand had drifted toward hers on the bench, but I pulled it back, gripping my knee instead. She studied me, long and steady. "This isn't," she stopped, exhaled. "You're my tenant." "I know. You're younger than my daughter." "I know that too." We both laughed, small and brittle. The dog had gone. The path was empty. "I shouldn't," she began, then pressed her lips together. "What?" "I shouldn't let you wait for me," she said finally. "It's not fair." I stared at the ground. "You don't tell me to." "No, but I see it." I forced a smile, though my chest hurt. "Maybe I just like the light in the stairwell." She gave a quiet, broken laugh. "You're cruel," she whispered, but her voice wasn't angry. Wind rattled the leaves above us. She reached for the paper bag, but her hand stalled halfway. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said, so low I almost missed it. "I keep thinking about you in the mornings. It scares me." I turned to her. The space between us felt as thin as the damp air. "Then why tell me?" "Because if I don't, I'll." She stopped, bit her lip, shook her head. "Forget it." We sat there, both looking at our hands instead of each other. A car passed on the street, distant and slow. "I'm not asking," I said, voice barely above a breath. "I just don't want to be invisible." She looked up, eyes wet but steady. Her fingers twitched, then rested on the bench between us, palm open. For a heartbeat, I thought she wanted me to take it. Then she drew it back, wiped it on her jeans, and stood. "It's getting cold," she said. I stayed sitting, staring at the space her hand had been. She shifted the peaches to her other arm, glanced down at me. Her lips parted. A question flickered there, one she didn't voice. Then she turned toward the path. After the park, she stopped knocking on my door. The hall lights stayed dark at night, even when I left it on. A week passed. The leaky window was fixed, but the towel stayed there like a habit I couldn't break. I started drifting past the cafe after classes, just to see if she was behind the counter. She was sometimes. Other times a younger barista took her place and said she was out running errands. When she did work, she kept her eyes on the register, her voice neutral. "You want the usual?" she'd ask without looking up. "Sure," I'd say, though I wasn't hungry. It wasn't punishment. She didn't seem angry. It felt more like she was folding herself away, tidying up a mess no one had named out loud. One afternoon, I walked in and saw a man at the far table, his suit jacket draped on the chair next to him. She brought him a sandwich and sat for a moment, saying something low that made him laugh. My coffee went cold before she noticed me. When she finally came over, her smile was polite, the kind reserved for regular customers. "Sorry about the wait," she murmured. "Busy today." "It's fine," I said. My hands shook slightly around the mug. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after. Upstairs, the repaired windows stayed dry. My phone collected unopened texts from my friend back home. One night, I started to write her a message. "Are you okay? Did I do something?" But erased it before sending. My thumb hovered over the screen, then closed it. Instead, I walked down to the stairwell and sat on the top step. Her door was closed. A light glowed under the frame. I thought I heard two voices, then just one. My chest tightened. The next morning, a note was taped to my door in her handwriting. "Rent due on the 1st. Please slip under my door." No smiley face. No thanks. Just business. I stared at the paper until the letters blurred. It wasn't heartbreak exactly. It was like someone had pressed pause mid-sentence. That evening, returning from the grocery store, I almost knocked on her door. I raised my hand, then lowered it. Inside, I heard her phone buzz, her footsteps, a chair scraping. Later, in my room, I found the photo of her daughter on my phone, the one taped to her fridge. I must have snapped it absent-mindedly months ago. I zoomed in on the girl's face, wondering if she knew about me, about any of this. Then I deleted the picture without saving. Another week passed. When I did finally see her again, it was by chance at the bus stop. She was on the phone, speaking low, her free hand gripping her bag strap. I caught fragments. Back in town, just for a few days. She hung up, saw me, and managed a small nod. No words. I wanted to ask who had been on the line. The man in the cafe? The father of her daughter? A new person altogether? But the bus arrived before I could speak. She boarded. I stayed on the sidewalk, the exhaust drifting around me. I watched the back of her head through the window as the bus pulled away. She didn't turn. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The rain came back in soft sheets that night, blurring the streetlights outside my window. I was packing my notes for a library shift when there was a knock on the door, 3 quick taps, then silence. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. When I opened it, she was there. No coat, hair damp, eyes tired. She held a folder under her arm, the kind that usually carried bills. "Sorry," she said. "The mail mixed up again. This was in my box." I took the folder, glanced at the address. "Thanks." She didn't move. Water clung to her hairline, rolled down her temple. I stepped aside. "You can come in, if you want." She hesitated, then crossed the threshold. The room smelled of tea I'd left cooling on the desk. She set her hands on the back of a chair, then let them fall. "I've been avoiding you," she said finally. I sat on the edge of the desk, the folder still in my hands. I noticed. She gave a small, humorless laugh. I thought it would make things easier. It hasn't. I wanted to reach for her, but stayed still. The rain tapped against the fixed window, a soft, uneven rhythm. "I saw you at the cafe," I said. "With that man." Her eyes flicked up. "Old friend. He helps with the books. That's all." She pressed her lips together. "I thought if you believed otherwise, it would undo whatever this is before it went further." "It didn't," I said. "Undo it, I mean." We stood in the quiet, only the rain between us. She walked to the window, touched the sill where the leak had been. "You remind me of myself when I was your age," she said softly. Before I started apologizing for existing. "I don't want to be a reminder," I murmured. She turned back to me, eyes steady. "Then what do you want?" The question landed like a weight. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened again. "I don't know. Just not to be invisible. Not here. Not with you." She exhaled, almost a sigh. And if you stop being invisible with me, what then? I didn't answer. My hands were trembling against the folder. She came closer, close enough that I could smell the damp cotton of her shirt. I'm scared, she said quietly, of wanting this, of what it might do to both of us. My daughter, my work, myself. She laughed once, without mirth. You're young. You should want someone who isn't already breaking her own rules. I shook my head. I don't want someone else. I keep thinking about the stairwell, the tea, the park. I thought maybe you did too. Her eyes softened at that. I did. We stood like that, the space between us small and heavy. She reached out, then stopped, her hand hovering near my arm. I can't promise anything, she whispered. I'm not asking for a promise, I said. Just honesty. She closed her eyes briefly, opened them again. Honesty is I wait for you too, she said. Even when I tell myself not to. My throat ached. Then what do we do? She smiled faintly, sad, relieved, something in between. We start by not hiding. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, very slowly, she rested her palm against my shoulder. Not a hug, not yet. Just warmth through damp fabric. I placed my hand over hers, feeling it tremble. We stayed like that, silent, the rain softening outside. Okay, she said at last, almost a breath. Okay. I echoed that. A year passed almost without us noticing. Not in a blur, but in small, steady increments. Coffee brewed at 8:47 a.m., black for me, weak tea for her. The window stayed fixed, yet I still kept the old towel folded in the cupboard. She laughed the first time she saw it and said, "A relic," then pressed it to her face like a keepsake. We never had a single talk about what we were. It unfolded instead through practical gestures. She started leaving a second mug on her counter before I came down. I began locking up the cafe for her when she closed late. On Sundays, we'd walk to the park, sit on the same bench where she once confessed she was afraid. Some mornings she'd read while I graded papers. Some nights I'd cook while she mended a seam. No declarations, just life filling in around us. Her daughter visited over the summer. I moved my books into boxes and stayed at a friend's flat for a week. When I returned, there was a note tucked under the towel on the sill. She's gone back. Thank you for giving us space. The handwriting was looser than usual, almost hurried. Under it, she'd drawn a small circle, like a quiet nod. The next day, she poured me tea without asking and said, "She liked you. She said you seemed kind." It was the closest she came to telling me we'd be okay. By autumn, my research job shifted to part-time teaching. She left the cafe and started bookkeeping for a small firm. The hours were steadier. She didn't come home late anymore. Or rather, we both did, at the same time. Sometimes we'd meet at the stairwell out of habit, only to realize we were already walking in together. It wasn't perfect. We still hesitated at doorways. She'd sometimes drift into a silence I couldn't read, and I'd still imagine texts I never sent. But the fear of losing what we had slowly loosened its grip. The park bench became our anchor. She'd bring bruised peaches, I'd bring a thermos. We'd sit and watch the same dog trot past, older now, grayer around the muzzle. One evening in winter, snow just beginning to fall, she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded napkin. It was from Harrow's Cafe, the one she used to line up with my toast. She set it on my knee without explanation. I smoothed it flat. That first time, she said quietly, I wasn't really sorry about the toast. I just needed a reason to talk. I smiled, throat tight. I know, I said. She leaned her shoulder into mine. Took us long enough. I glanced at her, the falling snow catching in her hair. We're here now. We sat in silence, our mugs warming our hands. The bench felt less like a pause and more like a place we'd chosen. I thought about that first night, the hall light glowing, her coat pulled tight as she crossed the street, how she hadn't looked up, and how I hadn't waved. Now, without speaking, she slid her hand over mine. I turned my palm up, lacing our fingers together. No drama, just warmth. Later, back at the flat, she flicked the hall light off and on once, a habit that had become our unspoken code. A small flash, meaning, I'm home. You're home. We're okay. I didn't say anything. I just watched the glow fade, feeling the quiet settle not as a pause, but as a full stop that had finally landed. It wasn't a perfect story, but it was ours.